I've got a question coming up from Luke in Brisbane. We'll get there in a moment. Ruck contests.
Yeah.
So I find that the hardest free kick to look at and understand is what the hell's going on in a ruck contest. Whenever you blow the whistle, I go, I don't know which way this is going.
Yep.
Let's put it in the context of knee to knee. And I think there are ruckmen who would much prefer to be able to use their arms rather than their knees and risk that.
So we're
but
talking
feel like they're going to
bounce.
get nailed with
We're
it.
talking
Yeah,
centre
We're talking
bounce, yeah.
centre bounce.
Okay, cool.
Walk me through the umpires and the ruckman's responsibilities in a centre bounce.
So the two opposing ruckmen are the only players allowed inside the big circle at centre bounce until the umpire bounces the football. And that second circle has been brought into the game because of exactly what you're referencing, which is that contact PCL. I remember Jamie Charman coming off the Merv Hughes run up. It was unbelievably intimidating. So that was brought in to try and mitigate against this risk to rucks. Bounce takes place. They've got to be either side of that centre line. Once the bounce hits the ground, now they can either put a foot outside the circle or cross that line or what have you. I want you to think of a plumb line coming down off the ball, because that matters, okay? So that's the drop of the ball, okay? In reference, because we're looking at things like block, etc. The easy ones for everyone, I think, to get a high tackle, so you can't smack them in the face or whatever, or if they jump up and they grab their jumper and throw them down, like that's a holding free kick. I think we all get that. Where we're all kind of like, pardon, is when we pay a block. So what are we looking for when we pay block? So marking contest and ruck contest have the same philosophy overarching, which is a player whose prime objective is to contest the football shall be permitted to do so. So if your intention is just, I'm going at that ball, we err your way in terms of how we cast our lens over it. Fair?
Yep.
Now, here are our cues. Ball goes up, think of plumb line down, ruck goes past it. So now the ball's back behind him or her. Yeah? Contest, gets back, makes contact with ball. We're okay with that. That's ruck work, apparently. And again, right, keep this in mind. I'm 4'0". So the sweet science of ruck, I have to go and speak to Brendan Lade about, right? And he loves to tell me all about it too, the big fella. I love it, right? So that's okay. But if you go past the ball, make contact, and you don't get back to it, block free kick. That's the guts of where we see blocks happening.
Yep.
Yeah? With arms, and you talked about, I know ruckman who'd probably prefer to be able to do that rather than the contact with the knee, which makes a lot of sense, and I understand that. Generally speaking, you'll see that happen when just one ruckman put their arm out. The other ruck is just contesting the ball, and one ruckman puts out the bumper bar, block.
Right.
When they both do it, nothing to see here. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And keep this in mind. This is where it's always a little bit of fun for those playing at home. Go out and bounce a ball. Right. So you jam this ball down. Your eyes have got to see your toe, because that's how you bounce it. And then you've got to back out.
Yes.
And these two giants come up.
Yeah.
And you're about 1.5 feet away, and you're trying to pick that out. So that's the challenge and the sweet science of centre bounce officiating.
Is there any restriction around the running at each other? So I think both of these knee injuries, you could make the case that Darcy and Draper had eyes squarely for their opponent.
Yeah,
and they ended up knee on knee, and the other player was the victim.
Yeah, cool. So without, and I don't want to get bogged down on those two examples and sound like I'm being heartless to those who have been injured, because that's hardly my position on this at all. Looking at someone, other than an umpire and putting your arms out, right? Looking at someone doesn't constitute a free kick. Okay? So that's just gathering information. So now you can apply proprioception and know where your body is in space and time and contest the ball. So the looking's fine. You start your side of the line and you can go to the ball. If you go beyond it and you make contact with your opponent, you got to get back and touch it. They're the parameters.
Yep. So, you can charge into your opponent.
Yep.
Contesting the ball.
Correct. Just like you can in marking.
Yep.
Just like you can at contest on the ground.
Yep.
It's a physical game.
Is there any is there any eyes weren't on the ball in a ruck contest?
It's a cue for us to go, remember I gave us the overarching principle, a player whose prime objective or sole objective is to contest the football shall be permitted to do so. So you can get a read on a player to go, what are you looking at? What are you actually focused on? So if they never look at the ball and they just wholly look at their opponent and just crash into them, was their prime objective to contest the ball, or are they just looking to take the oppo out?
Yep.
So it gives you a read, but it's not the law. The eyes or where you look is not a rule.
Yep.
It's just a cue.
I want to warn our next correspondent about dissent with Ray, which I simply won't tolerate. Luke Hodge, good morning.
Morning, Jared. Hello, Razor. How are you, mate?
Hey, Hodgie, how you doing, mate?
All right, fire away. You've been listening.
I have been. I had a lot of arguments with that ruck contest, but I'll let that one slide because you're not allowed to argue with the umpires anymore. Mate, this is more a question from the player-umpire relationship that you used to have a few years ago.
Yeah.
It feels like with the new instructions with no dissent, which I totally agree, and I reckon the players are getting so much better at it. It seems like you can't talk or have that communication with the player-umpire communication. I think it was either the Easter Thursday or Easter Monday game where the umpire said, I'm not talking to you now, move away. And it just feels like back 5 years ago, we could sit back, have a chat, you could clarify why you made that decision, and then it was like, okay, simple, move on. It just seems that is starting to get taken out of the game. How was it from an umpire's point of view?
It's a really reasonable question, Hodgie, and I don't know whether it's because I'm just north of 30, 45, but I have a similar sentiment. But I think what it comes down to is timing. So in a situation now, because we had this situation, mate, where you'd pay free kick inside 50, set shot on goal, and you'd have 6-8 players coming at you, and it was just getting out of hand. It was getting very, and I don't mean to pot soccer, but the world game, but it was very much that look. And so what we're trying to say now is, I would say to you, Luke, to answer it, timing's everything. So, goal results, we've got 45 seconds a minute. Happy to field a question. Come in the right way, come in the right manner, and you know what that is. That's sweet, right? And we will have that conversation. Hey, listen, if you step off your line and you do this, that's going to be a cue. If you grab him if you hook an arm around the waist and you plant him to the ground, I'm going to pay a hold. That sort of communication is still taking place. But that immediacy set when free kick paid, that's the part, that's the sort of the wedge in time where we're having to evolve. Yeah? We just need to cool it, man the market. If umpire set that up, goal results, okay, let's have a chat. No problem.
Is it, from my opinion, it looks like the umpire, so back even 2 or 3 years ago, you saw umpires smiling, joking around, really enjoying himself. To the naked eye, it looks like it's got that stressful, or they just don't have that energy or that excitement that they used to. Like the amount of times that whether me and you were having an argument, we were both laughing, or we had that tongue in cheek. That's what I'm thinking, because that was the best part, because that's where you go and have a beer with an umpire now afterwards, because you had that back and forth relationship. That's why I had to ask, because it seems like the umpires aren't either instructed to be more serious, or they just don't have that enjoyment that they used to.
Well, let's be honest. You and I are undiagnosed something, right? So let's start there. Certainly I am, but no, I get where you're coming from, mate. And it's a real thing. What I'm loving now is we've come out of these COVID protocols. We're getting to see the players a bit more as well. We're back out at club visits, those sorts of things. So it's something that I know the umpiring department are really keen on maintaining positive and authentic relationships. But in terms of this little piece here, mate, it's just this little segment, this little section in time, free kick paid, let umpire do their thing, player man the mark, and then right way, right time, we're still open to conversation. And you're right, it's fundamentally important in terms of understanding and collaborative relationship. I think it's really important, mate.
All right. Luke, you stay there. Ray, you go get scanned.
Will do. Cheers,
luck with
Hodgie.
it. So
you,
round 8. As that looms rather. So that's a couple of weekends' time, isn't it? Ray Chamberlain in the studio.